Danny from projectmanaverse.com, and in this video I'm going to answer the question, what is a schedule of events? So let's get started. First of all, why do you need to care about a schedule of events as a project manager? Well, a schedule of events is a key document for any IT related project, and you are going to, at the very least, be expected to understand it and read it and understand what's in there. And worst case scenario is you'll have to actually write it yourself and be the owner of this document. So you really need to understand what it is. So you can either make sure you can read it and contribute and ask questions about it, or you might have to actually write it yourself. So let's go on to what the schedule of events actually is. So first of all, to give some context, the schedule of events is used usually for your project implementation or your project go live. So obviously an IT project, you're going to be building something, then you're going to test it. And once it's all tested, you need to put that code from the test environment into your production environment, your live environment, and that's your implementation weekend. And that's what this document is used for. And it's a big deal because the implementation weekend is a culmination of all your hard work of your project. And I say weekend because they are usually done on a weekend when no one is using the actual software or application. That's of course if it's a internal application to your colleagues within the business. If it's a external customer application that's being used by anyone, you might have to do it in the late hours of the night. You just might have to have an outage so customers can't use the application as you're doing the implementation. Usually that's the case, but it's usually a big deal. It's usually done on the weekend and it usually takes a few days and people are working around the clock to get everything done in time. And the SOE, the schedule of events, is exactly that. It's a step-by-step set of instructions of exactly what to do to be able to move your code from the test environment to the production environment and turn the actual application on so people can start using it and it's running properly. Step by step, who's doing it at what time, a big fat list of all those things. So that's what your schedule of events is. The format is usually in Excel. It's usually done in Excel because that's very easy for capturing all the columns and filtering and all that kind of good stuff. There might be some software that your company uses to capture the schedule of events, but in my experience, it's usually done in the Excel format. Now, who uses it? Well, it's usually used by the implementation manager. So that implementation event, you're going to have a manager for it. Depending on the size of your project, it could be a big team doing it. It could be some kind of command and control center team that are going to be running the implementation if it's very wide reaching and you've got different areas and you just might be one part of that. Or it could be your own release manager, or it could be your own implementation manager, even if it's a smaller project, or it could be you, it could be yourself doing it and you'll be expected to run that implementation weekend. It all depends on the project and the size of the project and how your organization is set up to do these things. But it'll be used by the implementation manager, be that somewhere else, or be that you as a project manager with that hat on. Okay, it's usually, so I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to split it into 4 sections to help describe the SOE. So section 1 is all the prerequisites. What are the steps that need to happen before you can begin your implementation? Section 2 is the actual implementation itself. So the actual, during that big weekend event, what are all the steps that need to happen? Section 3 is the after testing, you could call it. So once you've actually done those implementation steps and the product is live, you want to do a little bit of testing to make sure it looks okay and you're happy with it before you can say, yep, this weekend has been a success and people can start using the application. And then section 4 is your back out. Now, sometimes you might put something into the live environment, you might try and go live, but it just hasn't worked for some reason. And what you need to do is roll back that code from production. You need to take it out of the production environment, and that's called your back out plan. So those are the 4 sections. So let me run through each one. So the prerequisite section, the first section, first of all, as I said, that's all the little steps you need to do before you can actually start the implementation event. And there could be technical things and there could be non-technical things. So non-technical things could be things like making sure the testing has been signed off. It could be making sure that all the resources are lined up and you've got their contact details and that's all fine. It could be that you've got the go decision approved. So you've had that decision from the senior stakeholders to go live and go ahead with the implementation. The technical things could be something like making sure people have got the right access, they've got their production access sorted, that's been confirmed, or that you might want to do something in the actual production environment, infrastructure related, that is not strictly part of the actual implementation weekend. Sometimes there is a lot of governance around doing things in that live environment, in the production environment. And sometimes you can get away with that or bypass that by doing things that aren't necessarily putting your application live, but they're just setting things up. So building the infrastructure, getting the servers ready, getting the databases ready. You can actually say that although you're doing it in the live environment, you're not actually running any data through, you're not using the system yet. So it doesn't actually class as being a live activity. So sometimes there's things like that you can do on the technical side ahead of your implementation weekend to save as much time as possible. So you might have some things like that on your prerequisite steps. So that's the first section. The next section is your actual weekend activities. So as I say, it's a run book, it's a playbook of every step of the process. So you just look at this, you follow this checklist and then make sure every step has been followed and you should be fine. Now what you want to do is make sure you have an owner for every single step. So who is the resource name doing that step? What time does it start? What time does it finish? Or what time do you anticipate it to finish? And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So make sure you have that, it's all documented, who's doing it, when does it start and when does it finish, so you can track that as your implementation is going through. Okay, the third section is the testing, the little kind of, we call it smoke testing sometimes. Smoke testing is like very light touch testing, just to make sure that everything looks fine. Sometimes you can't go too far with your testing because you can't really know that it's worked properly until you actually get data through that system and people start to actually use it for real. And sometimes you can call that first occurrence validation, when you actually start, the product is live, but you're outside of your testing phases, but we have what's called a first occurrence validation phase, where you're validating that all the things that need to happen, that all the processes and functionalities that you put in place are working correctly for the first time, and you can tick them off. But that's not what I'm talking about here. This is just a light smoke test to say, yep, looks fine, we can log in, everything looks okay. Might do a few little checks with some of the functionality that we can do, and once that's done, you can, yeah, we're comfortable that this is ready to go and people can start using it. So that was section 3. And the fourth section is your back out scenario. So it's very similar to section 2, the actual implementation. And you need to be very clear on what the steps are to back out the code, who's doing it, what times does it start and finish. So you know exactly how long that's going to take, that process. It's all mapped out and ready to go. So should you need to back out, should that decision be made, and sometimes it is made, you've got the plan to follow to make sure you can do that. Okay, so that is it. That's what a schedule of events is. So I'll just do a quick recap and then we'll call it a day. So schedule of events, typically in 4 sections. Section 1 is the prerequisite steps, and they can be IT related or non-IT related. So IT related could be something like making sure that all the engineers have access to production. Non-IT related could be something like we've got the go decision to go live with this. Section 2 is the actual implementation, the actual core SOE or the meat of the SOE, and that's all the steps you need to make sure that you're putting your product into the production environment and turning it on so it's working. Section 3 is that smoke testing. So what testing are you going to be doing? Is it engineering doing it? Is it business doing it? Is everyone going to have a quick look at the system to make sure they can log in and it looks okay? And then section 4 is your back out plan. Should it go wrong and it not work, how are you going to back out the actual application out of production? And that's just step-by-step run book of how to do that. Okay, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more videos like this one. And until tomorrow, please take care.